Today's question is, would you review the murders of Jackie Bellini and her nephew, Levon Harvin? Just a reminder that perps are considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, and even then, sometimes they are wrongfully convicted. So we're not accusing anyone, just speculating of what could be happening in similar circumstances. We'll begin with the background, then we'll move on to the incident itself, and then we'll offer my analysis, my takeaway. Jackie Bellini was a 57-year-old woman who lived in an apartment building in New York City along with her two pit bulls, one of whom was named Zeus. She had a neighbor, a guy by the name of Lanu Moore, who at the time was 31 years old. She had a restraining order against Lanu because, well, on April 11th at 1:30 in the morning, the reports say, he kicked in her front door and attacked her, allegedly with a hammer. She broke her arm in the, what would you call this, attack? Can't call it a fight, call it an attack. Two of her family members, two women, I believe, daughters perhaps, who were staying with her, were also injured. Moore was also accused of stabbing Zeus, the pit bull. Now let's move on to the incident itself. There are four characters involved. First is Jackie Bellini, a victim. Second, Levon Harvin, a victim. Third, Zeus, the bulldog, a victim. And fourth, Lanu Moore, the perp. Moore, the alleged attacker, was reportedly living illegally in the same apartment building as Bellini, living with his mother, who reports say was on some kind of government assistance. And apparently, Moore and Bellini had an ongoing dispute over Zeus, the pit bull. She had two pit bulls, and apparently he didn't like either one of them. So about 6 months after being attacked by Moore, in her apartment, Bellini was taking a Friday evening walk, a stroll with Zeus, and her friend, Levon Harvin. Earlier we said Harvin was a nephew. Most reports just called him a pal or a friend, but we're assuming. The one report was correct that identified him as a nephew. Moore, by the way, was arrested after that first attack, and he was incarcerated, and he was released on a $5,000 bond. That means he probably paid as little as $500 or 10% of that bond to get out. So Harvin reportedly was walking with Bellini, kind of like a friend slash bodyguard, because she really feared this guy. So a black-clad, I'm reading this, by the way, from New York Post, a black-clad, mask-wearing man with an umbrella walked up behind the two and shot them dead. 6 shots were fired, the report said, killing not only Bellini and Harvin, but Zeus the bulldog as well. Interesting side note, I read several reports about this, and one report noted that one of the police officers investigating was somewhat taken aback, was sad, because he didn't have to shoot the pit bull. Yeah, I kind of thought about that and said he didn't have to shoot Bellini, he didn't have to shoot Harvin, let alone the pit bull. Now let's move on to my takeaway analysis. First of all, we need to understand that if you live in an urban jungle, and virtually all of New York City falls into this category, you have to expect encounters with urban savages. This kind of reminds me of the Tarzan movies that were made back in the 30s and 40s. I used to watch them as a kid on television. And virtually every Tarzan movie had the same plot. You had this group of what would you call them? Civilized people who were trekking on a safari through the jungles of darkest Africa. And they were set upon by savages. Every single movie, same thing would happen. And when you watched the movie, you knew it was going to happen at the very beginning, because that's what happens. Same thing is true when you live in an urban jungle in the United States. It's going to happen, because that's the nature of the people who are savages. And what is a savage? Well, that is a person who behaves like a savage. The definition is just that simple. An urban savage just happens to be one of those people who lives in an urban area. And they tend to concentrate in those areas because, well, that's where the opportunities for crime seem to exist. Plus, they tend to like each other's company. They say that one of the safest places in the United States is in rural areas. The Appalachian Trail, they say, has one of the lowest crime rates anywhere. I mean, crime still happens, but very seldom. I live in a very safe, secure, isolated, insulated suburban neighborhood, but we still have crime. It still happens. But in urban jungles like New York City, just count on it going to happen. Jackie Bellini was obviously aware of her circumstances, of her surroundings. That was made evident when she took the precaution of having what we would consider, I guess, a bodyguard, a friend, go with her when she went out and walked her dog. And by the way, walking a dog, a Pitbull, is no guarantee that somebody isn't going to assault you. Now, to sane savages, if there are any, that could be a deterrent, but not much of one. That was made evident in this particular story. Second takeaway. We learned from this case that restraining orders mean absolutely nothing to psychopaths. Now, stop and think about this. Have you ever been under a restraining order? The answer to that question is you're always under a restraining order. You are right this very moment under order of the government not to exceed a certain speed when you drive a vehicle. So you're under that restraint. You're under that restraining order. It's not specific to you. It's a general restraining order. Virtually everybody I know speeds. I mean, they just do. They go with the flow of traffic. It's safer. And for some reason, everybody's in a big hurry to get somewhere so they can get there, arrive, and, 2 minutes early. And what do they do with those 2 minutes? I don't know. But for some reason, that just seems to be human nature. Those restraining orders don't hold us back. We got to drive 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. Now, consider somebody like Lanu Moore. He wasn't deterred by jail time. He wasn't deterred. I mean, apparently the thought didn't occur to him that, I just broke down this person's door and allegedly popped his victim in the head with a hammer. And apparently the thought never occurred to him, if I shoot these people, they just may put me back into prison. Now, maybe that thought occurred to him. I'm not a mind reader. I don't know this guy. I wouldn't know him if I saw him on the street. But just based upon the story, people like him, it seems to be the way that they think. That is the thinking pattern of a psychopath, of a narcissist. They're above everyone else. Rules and laws, including restraining orders, just don't seem to apply to them. They go to jail, they get out, and they go back and do whatever they did before they went to jail. Third thing, and this is kind of important. We think, wow, if Jim Crow laws had been in existence in New York City, then this guy, Moore, would have been segregated from Bellini, and then the crime would not have occurred. But what we don't stop to consider is, at this very moment, from what I understand, is Bellini and Moore are segregated. He is living in prison or jail, and she's dead. That's segregation. And before she was murdered, there was a short, brief period of time when they were segregated. When Moore was in jail, and Bellini was living in her apartment. So we say, well, there is no segregation in this country anymore. Actually, there is. Instead of segregating us socially, they wait until a crime is committed and then they segregate us, which maybe that's more fair. But then again, to the victims, is it more fair? That's cause for discussion. That's why we have a comment section. Speaking of which, if you like this video, leave a comment. Share it on social media. Give it a thumbs up. And if you've not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, you're invited to do that right now.